Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our session. So as we wait for these numbers to level off first, hello, everyone. My name is Isabel Porras. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Senior Director of Learning and Development at Out and Equal, and I am very excited to introduce our dear colleagues from Citi in just a second for our conversation today on maximizing your experience at Summit. But before we do that, as you can see on the screen that hopefully is sharing, we are going to be using Mentimeter, third-party polling software to gather your questions, gather some of your feedback and responses in order to make this interactive. So I ask, you have two options. One is to open a new tab in your browser window, or better yet, your phone, so you're not kind of toggling back and forth, and go to menti.com and enter the code there. You can also hover over the QR code with your camera, and that should pop open the link for you. If you've been to a restaurant at any point in the pandemic, I'm sure you're familiar now with the QR code magic. So one of those two options, please, menti.com, and enter the code 6022 4194, making sure I'm saying the right code. Once you're in there, and I see folks are already doing that, once you're in there, you'll see a heart. If you double tap that, it'll let us know you're in the system. And we will be following the chat feature and the Q&A feature that are here in Zoom, but we want to really encourage you to capture your questions in this feature. Since folks will be able to upvote, we'll be able to compile those more quickly. So basically, let's use Mentimeter and let's just focus on Zoom for the purposes of sharing content. Having said that, I see that those numbers are increasing, so folks are joining the Menti page. I don't want to take up more time. I'm going to get off camera and I am going to turn the mic over to Joanne Bro, who is our dear friend at Citi and is Vice President of Global Diversity and Talent Management. So very excited to welcome Joanne and the Citi team. I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, Isabella. Thank you so much for having us. I'd like to welcome everyone to Maximizing Your Delegation's 2021 Summit Engagement. Like Isabella said, my name is Joanne Bro. I use she, her pronouns. I am a proud veteran and mother of two daughters. I am a vice president on Citi's Global Talent and Diversity team. I manage several of the firm's strategic priorities. We want to advance the diverse and inclusive leadership. And I also am fortunate to be the Pride Affinity Relationship Manager. I stepped into that role a few months ago, back in May of this year, and you're going to hear from some fabulous contributors today, but I'm so fortunate to have people like them stepping into an already strong foundation. I didn't want to lose the progress, that they've made from prior years, but just jump right in and support them. And just as much as our clients, within the business need us on diversity strategy, we can rely on them to help us organize and use their skills as well. So now I hope you're excited because I'm going to turn it over to Drew Kirkbride. He has been a Pride leader for many years in many capacities and has definitely built a strong foundation, but hope that many of you will follow. Drew's going to discuss Citi's creative strategies for the pre-conference engagement. He'll talk to you about how you make the most of their time at the conference and creative ways that you can share summit learnings with the rest of your organization. Drew, over to you.
Thanks, Joanne, my hype girl, for the introduction. People like you give people like me the opportunities to pave new paths in our careers and personal lives. So for the audience that we have today, I want to see first our first Mentimeter question. How prepared is your organization with attending the 2021 summit? Let's just get a gauge on where people are feeling right now before I get into the session. So that way I know the points that I want to hit on a little bit more. So we got some procrastination station, but I see some we're on track. So it looks like people may have plans in place already. That's good. We have 84 participants today, and we are roughly around 40 people responding. So it keeps going up. So good balancing here so far. Okay, I'm glad to see not too much procrastination station and more of we are on track to get to the October 6th date, which is just less than 1 month away. So let me first start off with a little bit of information. Would you mind going back one more, Isabel, too? So when planning and attending Out and Equal, number one, lead with the priority of your employees. After you feel confident about meeting their needs, then position it to support the rest of your corporate partners' goals and priorities like consumer marketing, PR, diversity and inclusion, branding, and recruiting. But number one, make this conference and the summit about how your employees feel. Many of these individuals that are part of the LGBTQ community have likely asked questions or researched about the company before joining and said, will this company protect my rights as a queer individual, even if the government will not? Will I need to go back in the closet when starting the company, or do they lead with soul and compassion? Are there individuals that represent me or that I can feel trusted with outside of the heteronormative norms? And for those that are allies, they might have asked, how do I support my LGBTQ employees? Or they may have had a child recently come out and wanting more education, and they're going to look inside their company knowing that there's already a strong foundation to support the community. So giving LGBTQ plus and allies these rare training opportunities creates a sense of belonging through their being authentic and signaling acceptance throughout the company. And you don't know what you may be releasing. You could unlock potential and create a new journey for each of them. So that's why I want to lead first with creating a culture of belonging starts with us. And with us, it's within your own company before showing up at the summit. You may turn the page here. So let me share a little bit about why I am so passionate about Out and Equal in the summit. So in September of 2016, I received the call from my HR partner that I identified me as an individual to attend the conference. I thought we were too late. I didn't understand how we were going to get funding, but I really wanted to go. Unfortunately, that year was fraught with a lot of troubles across the nation, as well for me personally. It was Orlando that year. It was the year of the hurricane. Disney shut down for only the 5th time. There were bathroom bill fights had heated up across the country and especially in North Carolina at that time. And the community was feeling vulnerable just months after the Pulse massacre, not including the anticipation of the upcoming election. For me, it was 2 weeks into grieving my father, but attending the conference was magical, and it truly was. It was in Disney. It was everything that I wanted the first conference to be. I felt like a kid in a candy store. There were other professional queer people there. I got to meet other colleagues for the first time that were sharing similar qualms and challenges about the fight to move their Pride Network and programming events. We had meaty conversations about the future of work with other attendees from other companies and just a feeling of being a part of something greater. I challenged myself in every way. I remained vigilant to the norms of what was happening with the other 5,000 to 6,000 attendees. I attended sessions that I was early on in my learning spectrum. And I even went into a genderless bathroom for the first time too. Sounds silly, but it was 5 years ago at that point. I share this because Out and Equal was a catalyst to my success in my gay job. And I like to say, as a young Drewby, it provided the spark I needed. And in future years, we fortunately saw increased discussions in mental health, which really resonated back to the first year after my passing of my father. 2 of the individuals I was fortunate to meet from City, David and Dora, will be some of the expert presenters later on specific ideas that you could implement. So I want to first introduce them. And David is chief of staff for the private bank. He's attended 4 times. He's out of New York. And Dora is based out of Tampa, has attended 2 times, and she now sits within our operational risk management business. And I've been fortunate to have attended 4 times. So David and Dora, if you could pop off the camera, I'm going to ask you one question just to describe your first time attending Out and Equal and what the residual benefits of the conference was for you. So Dora, you can go first.
Sure. So, thank you, Drew. Attending Out and Equal for the first time was personally transformative. It's the best word I can use. It was 2018. I was the co-chair of our Tampa Pride Network, and I was looking to bring back a wider viewpoint of LGBTQ experience to our campus of 8,000 employees. At Summit, I was inspired, motivated, and humbled all at the same time. And I learned an immense amount from every single person I encountered. I couldn't get enough learning. I wanted to go to every session. When I came back to Tampa, I focused on connecting with others and giving them the space to be their true selves. I grew as an LGBT leader in my business, in my role, in my Pride network, and of course, across the site. David?
No, thanks, Dora. That was great to hear. For me, I mean, one of the things that I really not many of you are familiar with Citi, but Citi is a company of like 200,000 people, right? And I kind of sit up in New York in the headquarters. What I found kind of great about Out and Equal, and which you'll hear me touch upon later, is that I got to meet people from outside of New York, right? So from some of the smaller offices that we have across, so from, some of the less liberal places that there are, and, not everything is as easy as it is in New York. So really understanding other people's nuances and what they're going through, and just kind of understanding that not everyone has it easy. And then that just kind of reframed my thinking. How can I give back across the whole organization and across the community? So you'll see later when I talk about a little bit what Drew tapped me on the shoulder to kind of hear about where I think that I tried to add some value for our delegation that here at Citi. Back to you, Drew.
Thanks, David. And I'm glad David brought up that point, because that was something that we observed early on, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit. So if we go to the next Mentimeter, I want to start to set up the session and talk through what our situation was as an organization, what the problem that we faced because of it, and our approach to implementing the different solutions to create greater connection across the delegation. So thank you for those starting to answer the questions and finding out how many attendees are coming from your organization, just so we can get a gauge here as well of who our participants are. So 6 to 14, very good. It's a good sweet spot. We have 5 to 4, or is that 5 individuals as well there? All right, 50 to 74, only a few, okay, and 75 plus gets to be a little bit more challenging. Your delegation is quite large, but it does look like this 49 here in the 14. It's a little hard to see. The bubbles are some of our most. So we have got a little bit more medium size. And then also it's good to see those at the smaller, because you can still do activities to engage your delegation from there. Thank you, Isabel, for running the poll. We'll go ahead and move on, but at least I know the sweet spot is somewhere right around the size that Citi typically sends as well. So I like to say we created a good problem to have. As our snowballing interest in attendance grew from different lines of the business and geographies, our delegation looks more like that of those who attend Out and Equal. David shared that we have over 200,000 plus employees at Citi across the globe. Our theme for last year was the most deliberately expansive attendance in order to amplify the learnings across Out and Equal. So how are we going to do that with 65 attendees last year and on average anywhere from 30 to say 50 in the previous years? We have 70% of them are first timers from our organization, which is very common within Out and Equal. In 2020, they reported 63% were first timers. Both City and Out and Equal increased our representation by 9 new countries in 2020. City with 11, Out and Equal with 51. City has a hub and spoke model for affinity networks. And if you don't know what that means, you'll get to learn at the conference a little bit more as you're setting up your own network. We have 29 different chapters, and last year we had 25 of the 29 represented. We become thoughtful to invite partners across different lines of the business that could provide more impact and make it easier for us to attend the conference. And most importantly, we are not exclusive to levels within the business, but the majority of attendees are senior individual contributors, and we try to invite more directors so that there is more leadership visibility. If you could go to the next Mentimeter, let's see what types of challenges each of you face when attending Out and Equal, if you have attended before. And if this is your first year, what are some of the challenges you anticipate when attending the conference with your delegation? And this one is an open text. So some ideas that I could think about, as well as anticipation of how am I gonna know what sessions to attend? What are my company's goals? Here I see there's a cost to send more people, bringing back the deliverables, okay. Management support, that's a really good one there. Attending all the sessions I'd like to. Luckily, Out and Equal has some pathable solutions for that. Sharing information between the other candidates. Wow, these are really, really spot on items that I would have expected to see, and that I'm glad to see that we all consistently face the same issues, though that means that we can all have an opportunity to share our best practices with each other like today. So no specific company focus. We're very new and have no idea what to expect. Well, I'm glad you're here. Unfortunately, again, Out and Equal gives a lot of good prep going into the summit. And it's hard to separate work while attending virtually, definitely. All right, thank you, Isabel, for scrolling through those. We'll go ahead and share with our good problem the challenges it faced with us, which again, line up very much to what you all shared there. So the first one is the disconnect on the affinity goals. So because we had so many different regions, countries attending, we wanted to make sure that we're cascading a global expectation on our goals from the affinity. So there is a need to have a broad awareness across all the attendees to ensure that we're capturing the learnings from the conference that support our own personal development along with the organizational goals. And sometimes that does vary by the different regions that attend. The one that I really want to focus on here is observing the click formation. So David called that out, where New York for us has a very large presence of attendees. So they already have a strong connection with each other. How do we facilitate creating greater connection across regions, across different lines of businesses, as well as different sites? That's one thing that we implemented, where I'll talk a little bit more about. We've also heard, not specifically in our organization, that it could become non-inclusive to those that are people of color when there is some of that dichotomy of where they are located. Addressing a need to share best practices, somebody called that out as well. So we want to make sure we're finding ways to create forums for individuals to share what they want to achieve within their own chapter and find ways to be more efficient. Establishing strong networks after the summit is one that I also want to hit on, because from a learning model perspective of the 70-20-10, 10% of your time should be spent on your formal learning, which is Out and Equal. Well, the other 90% needs to go somewhere else. That 20% through socializing with your other networks, and the 70% is on the job. And on the job, it could be your day job. It could be implementing programmatic solutions. It could be trying things out with others' networks. So Right now, we're really only caring for the 10 and the 20% of that formal learning and that socialization. Lastly, we need to continue to garner the support on the return on investment, where somebody said an increased number of attendees, you need to get more financial support for them to go. So by going to Out and Equal, showing what you've learned in the actions that are created from it, it could prove the return on investment and for future support. Lastly, one that we still, I think, are struggling with is attendee identification. So we've tried different ways to identify throughout the 200,000 employees across city how we should represent and submit individuals to go. I've heard from other organizations of best practices that they have, but that's one thing that I know we still are challenged with, that we are working through and continuing to find the best approach. And I hope to hear more ideas, especially this year. Thank you, Isabel. So in Abby Wambach's book, Wolfpack, How to Come Together, Unleash Our Power and Change the Game, she takes 8 old rules that she insists we need to let go of, which were not inclusive, to adapting those 8 new rules to help women lead the landscape of their lives and world. I'll talk about 2 rules today and ask that you keep those rules in mind as you tackle the month ahead and the outward years. So the first rule I'm going to talk about briefly is instead of waiting for permission to lead now from wherever you are. So here's a foundation that we set up in place to help categorize as you're trying to think about those outward years of what you want to implement. First of all, you need to have planning. This is the table stakes to success. It's the processes and individuals that are accountable for the success. Second, you can start with some of the basics, the low effort, or I like to call this security. It's the connections that you're creating between people in making sure that resources are easily accessible. If you want to take it a step up, there's the level up, which is medium effort, but this really harnesses the voices of the delegation and brings their ideas and experiences back into the organization. And then we go one more step to the pinnacle that we've experienced at City, which is our advanced, our high effort, and our importance. And that's where Dora and David will talk a little bit more about. And lastly, I want to throw out the unknown. The unknown is through us sharing best practices, us talking, figuring out the processes people go to and how we implement it with our own cultures. That's the unknown that is so great, why we keep these conversations alive. Most importantly, all of these items could be done, whether in person or virtual for the summits. Majority of them are scalable, like we saw earlier with that last second to last bubble chart, that it could be for 5, 10, 50, or 75 plus people. And more importantly, these were not all initiated in one year. They were built off of each other year after year. We've taken a few ideas each time and added them on. And we've removed some as well that we also found were not successful. So it's okay to fail. And Isabel, if you want to pass to the next page, I'll start to talk through each of those little bubbles. First, develop a structure for your success. So set your summit vision. I'm going to be a little bit corny here with this one. Let's give them something to talk about. Was this year's theme for our business? And it's from the iconic 1990s song by Bonnie Raitt. What we wanted to do is have a moonshot idea because we have not collectively participated in every offering of Out and Equal. That was our objective for this year, as well as doubling the attendance. So we want to give all parts of the business the opportunity, pulling in recruiting, pulling in GPA, and our creative services team to really come together collectively and to give them something to talk about. And as I said last year, our theme was really around how do we get the most individuals to attend that we possibly could, so that way more people are aware of the benefits of Out and Equal and can talk about it within their business. So you're starting to create that snowball effect and get more people engaged. That's our first piece, is setting the vision. This came up more offhand, but it's really helped us throughout the past 2 years. The second part is designing an expansive steerco. Like I just talked about, we've now started to bring many parts of our business and their subject matter experts in their areas to help support with things like the summit booth, as well as developing the workshops or submitting different Audis. We also recommend that you assign co-leads for your delegation and that they have a 2-year rotation. This is the best practice we also learned at Alden Equal for just a standard affinity network steering committee. So that way you have that continuous knowledge turn with the different individuals and opportunities for them to be visible and spotlight. We develop deliverables, timelines, we assign owners, and we set status meetings that we check in on every week. And lastly, add your own little splash each year. I can't reiterate this enough. Take one thing and add just a little bit more, continue with that foundation unless it's something that didn't work. You'll see at the bottom, there's a little bit of a flow timeline. Here's what our process is for planning from May until October. Now, this could fluctuate depending on the size of your organization, the number of resources that you have, but really the key steps in the order in which they should take place. But don't forget that we're part of the LGBTQ plus community, and we spend a lot of time in the month of April, May, and June just planning for Pride Month and for all the celebrations that take place. So be kind with yourself during that time and make sure that you're not overburdening yourself with the other obligations that you may have then as well. Next, Isabel, if you want to move on to the next page, we start to talk about the next bubbles. So we started to talk about how do we plan. Now let's talk about how we actually engage our delegation. The first and easiest is set up a messaging platform. What this does is it's most of people's favorites that attend. We initiate it through different services, whether it's WhatsApp, Slack, GroupMe, and we suggest it 15 to 30 days in advance. It's created excitement, connections for those that want to share their learnings from sessions or more real-time communication, often sharing personal photos, their partners, their pets, their pride parade that they've attended, or recommending the top sessions that they've went to. Wow, I just went to company X's session. They were really well prepared. Maybe if you haven't decided on one that you want to go to, I would recommend searching for another one by that company as well. That's something that takes place in our chats. We like to share the learnings more real time and maybe even feed off of each other during that process. This, if adapted to in person, not just in a virtual setting, we used it to organize ourselves around dinners, rides, grabbing drinks at the bar, or any type of other social activities. But there are some considerations. One is make sure you're checking with your organization's policies around messaging platforms, set guidelines and expectations of how to use it, allow it to be an opt-in feature. Some people do get overwhelmed by that additional communication. And note that this is not tied to the Alden Equal Path Bowl. This is something we use to help communicate with each other during the conference. The next one is the delegation book. This is more like your high school yearbook. So it's really to provide insight on the diversity of attendees from their locations, their roles, their tenure at the company, their prior Alden Equal experiences, what they hope to get out of the summit this year, which really allows them to have more of an intent of what they're hoping to learn. You can also include other fun facts and tie to the summit theme. Last year, while it was supposed to be in Vegas and it ended up being virtual, our summit book was really around the casinos and the look and the feel to what Alden Equal was presenting. When we talk about the ins and outs of Alden Equal, this is a little bit of a tongue twister, but for us, it is the hosting of calls prior to the summit to align all the attendees on the expectations, to reinforce the goals, And this is not to replace the Out and Equal pre-summit call, which also gives more of the logistics behind it. Here, we address a lot of those challenges that we talked about just a few slides ago after the situation, like what are the expectations? What are some of the affinity goals? What is it that we would like each of our delegates to come back with to share learnings? So this is also very important because, as the stat I shared earlier, 70% of our attendees are first timers, Out and Equal historically 63%. So these additional touches make sure that people have clear guidance when attending the conference. There are some other ideas that we've tested out as well, which are end of the day regroups, as well as organizing lunches for the different delegates in our basic low effort tactics. As we take it a step up, Isabel, to the next level up with our medium effort tactics, here we start to get a little bit more nuanced in creating that sense of belonging. The first one is around the session tracking. This one, I will say, is not to be done if you have more than, say, 15 people attending. The way that we designed this is so that way everybody pre-identifies the sessions they're attending, cross-shares it across a small group, so that way you don't have 5 to 10 people attending one session, 10 people attending another, and you can diversify your learnings as much as possible. It's to create broader learning opportunities, and again, it can be cumbersome. For instance, I always suggest that people attend sessions, say there's 9 sessions, 1 to fit personal development, for me, storytelling, 1 that supports my local networks development, recruiting, 1 to fit the company objectives, self-ID, and 1 is something that I'm just not as familiar or early on my learning spectrum with, for instance, bisexual awareness. The next one is the feedback loop. This is very straightforward. A survey post a conference, and this is what we use for our team, our work planning and working team as our next year's baseline activities. I recommend getting the survey feedback into 3 different buckets, and that is Out and Equal learnings, goals of your organization, and programmatic events that you could run. The next area is amplification. So this is how we amplify our message within the organization after attending. So again, this helps support our return on investment. This is when individuals from their different business lines work with their own public affairs or internal communications to share their experience of attending the summit, what they learned, their aha moments. It's to create stories, visualization, be impactful. We're also working closely with our external comms as well to think about how do we promote our attendance on social media, and how do you also provide similar templates to those that are attending the conference if they wish to promote for consistency in branding. What I would recommend as a pro tip here is the providing of the templates to the delegates. We're going to try it out this year for our first time, and hopefully it's successful. And lastly, the executive roadshow. This is a more formal story or storytelling of what who the key stakeholders are. You're asking them for the support, what you've learned, reinforcing your attendance, providing them with the breakdown, the conference themes, and what recommendations or what would you like them to do to continue to support you throughout your journey within your own affinity network. So I'm going to take a break now, and I'll pass it over to my advanced efforts individuals of Dora and David, and they're going to talk through what they were instrumental in creating for Out and Equal in 2019. Dora, if you could talk through ambassadors, and David, LGBTQ+ Leadership Day.
Sure. So in 2019, City implemented the ambassador program to address some of the concerns from previous years. As Drew mentioned, there was a disconnect with our affinity goals. We saw cliques naturally forming around those who already knew each other, and we didn't have a forum for capturing learnings and bringing that collective value back to the greater city community. So as part of the ambassador program, We identified 4 leaders to shepherd smaller groups of 7 or 8 individuals across business units, different tenure, and across sites to ensure a sense of belonging and inclusivity, to maintain dialogue, to gather the learnings, and to collaborate on meaningful recommendations. As an ambassador, I met with my team prior to Summit to establish relationships and to set those expectations. At Summit, I gathered Team Rosenbaum at the end of each day to discuss the sessions, to capture the feedback, and to check in to see, the progress of my team members. We have a separate group chat in addition to the overall delegation to really just keep in touch with each other. And we scheduled a shared dinner together to further build on our relationships with one another. Post-Summit, I held regular meetings with my team over the course of about 2 months to develop our proposal. My team identified the need for manager training to address what we felt was a perceived lack of LGBTQ culture, competency, and awareness amongst managers. We documented the situation, we came up with a proposed solution and some expected results. Some of the other recommendations from the additional ambassador teams were programs around furthering allyship, providing resources for mental health, and implementing a global reverse mentoring program. Once finalized, we shared these with the greater Pride Affinity and business leaders as part of our Out and Equal summary. They were also taken back to the Pride networks for implementation at the local level. And if I haven't convinced you yet, I will tell you that the ambassador program was a game changer for our delegation. We were able to establish a sense of belonging and connection to each other and to our firm before we even arrived at Summit. And we were able to carry that momentum and energy forward into all of our future LGBT programming. David?
No, thanks, Dora. That was great to hear that. So I'm just gonna piggyback off of that and just kind of come out here and say that I could be guilty, and I think Drew would agree with this, that I was part of that cliquey crowd here in New York. So really one of the things that I wanted to kind of change for me was how do we kind of get around to meeting everybody pre-summit. So I think back in 2019, Drew and I were tapped to co-lead the delegation here in Washington, D.C. So being in the business that I was in, we actually have an office in Washington, D.C. So prior to Summit, we asked all of the delegation, and I think that year the delegation was quite large. It was 40 plus people. Correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but I think it was 40 plus people from all across the different businesses. So we had people from all across North America and a few people from Singapore, from Australia, Europe, Brazil. So we had a really robust delegation here. I was like, okay, what's a great way for all of us to meet each other? So what I did with Drew and another guy in my team, we created LGBTQ plus Leadership Day, which was kind of a day, just one to give the folks that were joining us from City, one kind of an icebreaker so that other people have the ability to meet one another, to kind of learn from one another, just have a kind of, if you think about it, like icebreakers in person. Then what we did was we really coupled it with some leadership opportunities. So what, depending on the size of your business or, what kind of resources you have, we worked with our learning and development team. And I understand that a lot of firms won't have specific learning and development teams. But what I was able to do was, partner with my business's learning and development team and asking them to provide, resources to some across the firm to groups that generally wouldn't have access to that. And one of the things that we were working on was understanding your values, what can make you a better leader. So, giving people access to like surveys, and we had someone actually facilitate the discussion on what that means for you. So it really was a good way for us to learn more about each other and how we, interact in their day jobs. Working off of that, we also added some components about, we had leaders from across North America. So we had Pride leaders across, I don't know where it is, like Sioux Falls, we had Pride leaders across, Gray, Tennessee, Tampa, other areas of across the US. So really we kind of learn from them and try to understand what are the nuances they're facing within their own affinity networks. And what I thought was even more special is that once we created this, once people got word, seniors across the firm came down from New York, came down from wherever they were to kind of pay it forward and present at this. So we had the leader of our Pride affinity here at City, who was actually based out of London, came to kind of talk to us because this was the first of its kind. It was something that we kind of paved the way. And then once we found out that we were having this session, our DC leadership joined us. So we had some of our very senior leaders from DC join us on a rooftop just to join us for our little closing event that we had. And we found it was really special. It was a really way for people to get to know one another before, for those who've been to the conference in person, you kind of all go your separate ways, you go to different sessions, but this is, a way to get 8 hours together where we just get to know one another, have good conversation, and, learn from each other. And then the one final thing I'll say is that what this kind of led to, and working with Isabel at her group, was we kind of created a learning development program with Out and Equal, which was piloted last year, where we had 600 people across City join that learning and development team. And then it kind of, now I think this year it's more than 1,000. So it's really, we were able to kind of partner with Out and Equal to take the best of what we did and the best of what they have and kind of create a healthy marriage between the two. So, if you have the ability to do this, and, if you're able to kind of do a bottoms up, grounds up approach and, commit, and it wasn't super expensive, commit a few dollars from your business, I think it goes a long, long way. So Drew, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Dora and David. And I think they both hit a spot on that. These were probably our most successful activities, and everything else enabled us and empowered us to get to this point, which was wonderful to see. There was, David called out, we got to connect people from Boise, Tucson, New York, Tampa all together in this session and understand their common challenges, but also be greater at sharing information afterwards. So as we start to wrap up this session, Isabel, if you don't mind passing to the next page, I want to ask everybody, what activities have you introduced that were successful? What can I take and make maybe my own little best practices in the future years? So we'll look at some of those, and as they come in.
It always takes a second, Drew.
It's all good.
Yeah. I'm always like, the machine broke. No, people need a second to type.
Yeah.
Oh, a WhatsApp group is one.
And while you're typing it, one thing that I do suggest after reading Adam Grant's Think Again book was that I don't suggest that you just adopt all the best practices that we recommended. I ask that you consider the anticipation of the needs of your attendees, your own corporate culture, what policies you have in place, what you want to spearhead and challenge, and take those best practices at face value because they demand conformity. Make them your own. Consider your own unique challenges. Hold teams accountable. It's about the process, not just the outcome. And do it for the quality of thinking that produces these new options. So I see internal podcast about the LGBTQ matters. That's great. Track captains with report backs. Awesome. That is a brilliant one. Planning to meet with the delegation to talk about the sessions to attend, make a mix of personal and cool. That one's good as well. Make sure that you understand they may have some personal development that they also want to achieve, and they could share that back if they found an awesome session. I personally also like to just take 2 to 3 notes of true takeaways per session because there's so many that you can attend that it's overwhelming to try to take all the ideas that come out and really just focus it in to say, what can I action? LGBTQ Jeopardy in preparation for the learning curves at Summit. Good, that's awesome, especially when you have those that have attended in the past to share. Buddy system for first timers. I'll call out too, if you're one of the smaller organizations, that Out and Equal does have a buddy system that you can partner with them and meet external people. Only my second year going to Out and Equal, looking for new ideas. Did have group chats. Everyone shared great words of wisdom, moments from the sessions. It's awesome. Again, setting expectations, allowing people to opt in. I know sometimes queer folk can feel uncomfortable about photos of loved ones at their desk or things that they're interested in. So this kind of creates that first foray into being able to feel comfortable in sharing that, and as well as their pets too. Thanks, Isabel, for running this one. So again, it's the unknown. This is why we collaborate. Some other ideas that I would love to attempt in future years are identifying a senior sponsor that's really shepherding us and helping us tackle those barriers faster. Attendee equity, talked about that as well. How are we determining who attends? What are some of those post-summit activities that we can run, as well as prepare earlier? I'm sure that's everybody's ideal situation. And so what I did this year, May 3rd on the calendar, I had an invite out the day after the conference ended last October, and to set it that we're going to meet and start to kick off what we want to achieve. Simple little thing. Put a calendar invite, it'll come out before you know it. All right, we are wrapping up. I am just 2 minutes over the planned time, so I'm gonna leave you with a couple of takeaways today. So first, if you want to move to the next page, I want to share with everyone that this is the business of belonging, and it starts with us. You need to make sure that your delegation feels comfortable, prepared, so that way they're in their best learning environment when attending the conference. Don't forget that 70, 20, 10, 10% formal learning, 20% socializing with the delegates, 70% is actioning it. Developing the structure for success. Be inclusive with your engagement. Bring people from different parts of the business that have their own unique access and challenge or access and individuals that they could tap into. And lastly, my favorite here is around Abby Wambach's rule of lead now from wherever you are. I personally treat Pride as my playground with a rubber mat. I can fall with any of the ideas that I have, and I'm not going to get hurt. And then I can take those learnings into my day-to-day job. So I'll leave you with the final Abby Wambach rule from Wolfpack. Try, fail, feel it burn. And the rule is transform failure into your fuel. It means that you're finally in the game. So don't worry and just lead now from wherever you are. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to interacting with you at Summit. I believe Isabel is also tracking any questions. I'm sure I could stay on a little bit more, but we also are open to sending responses back afterwards. So I'll let her do those final touches there, but I appreciate my team of the D Cubed, David, Dora, and myself, as well as Joanne for presenting today.
Thank you so much, Drew. And honestly, thank you to everyone for joining our conversation today. A special thank you, Drew, David, Dora, Joanne, for all the hard work that you are doing to put this together. I will encourage folks who are still on the line to submit any questions as we wrap up. I do believe we have just one, so I'm just going to flag this one for you if it is something we can engage with now. And I think you might have hit this. This came in early on, but how do you balance, right? Sending new folks as well as engaging leaders and others. I found some of you have attended a few times. How do you determine the right attendees? Drew, I know you said that this was something you're all working on, but any quick takeaways that you can share with folks who are kind of in the same boat?
Yep. So I often look to those that are engaging during the conference and then after to make sure that they have the opportunity to attend in the following years, because they have shown and mirrored a true leader, and they could really be a great buddy for the others. Some people may feel like they've attended Out and Equal too many times. I don't believe it, but I'm sure they're ready to pass the baton and make sure their ticket is not being used by somebody else that may just be a little droopy, ready to be inspired and ready to have this catalyst moment. So I would say look for those known leaders that are really proving the return on the investment of attending the conference. And those are who you should, as well as those that have the appetite to continue to learn.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Drew. I don't see other questions coming in, and I know that folks need to drop for other meetings. So again, a heartfelt thank you. I see some thank yous coming in for you all as well during the chat. This was excellent, shared lots of great resources. And selfishly, I'll say, someone who's kind of on the other side, planning a lot of this, it's so invigorating to see just how much work you all put in and how much the summit means for our community. So thank you again for sharing. Thank you everyone for joining. Really looking forward to seeing everyone's lovely faces and chatting during our time together in October. So be on the lookout for an email from us with this deck recording and some additional resources. So again, thank you, everyone. Have a lovely rest of your Thursday or Friday, depending on where in the world you're joining us from. Thanks all.